Number 10, a giant hole. And by giant, I mean 2/3 the area of Manhattan and nearly 1,000 feet tall, large enough to have once held 15 billion tons of ice. Beneath the Thwaites Glacier in West Antarctica, there is a gap between the glacier and the bedrock that was discovered only recently by NASA scientists. Much of the void, as they are calling it, is a result of the melting that has occurred over the last few years. According to Eric Rigneau, scientists had suspected that the Thwaites Glacier was not attached to the bedrock beneath it. This void in the ice has helped reveal to researchers how much the ground has shifted between 1992 to 2017 and continues to lead to more discoveries, and who knows what's next. Number 9, super seals. I'm very glad that I will never know what it's like to survive in the perilous and unforgiving icy tundra that is Antarctica, especially since you need to be a super seal to survive there. Weddell seals had researchers perplexed for a while because they have an uncanny ability of knowing where the gaps in the ice are so they can come up for air. Weddell seals can dive down hundreds of meters while hunting and still find their way up to breathing holes with ease. After years of study, in 2014 the National Science Foundation announced the apparent cause. They may have a sixth sense, and no, it's not that they can see other dead seals. By using the Earth's magnetic field as a natural GPS, these seals are able to find the openings in the ice. Still crazy to me. So not only are they adorable, incredible divers and hunters, they can predict where they need to go in order to survive, which is insane to me. Number 8, glass sponges. No, they aren't actually made of glass, but the reason they are called that is because of the fact that their skeletons contain silica, which is a component of glass. They act as filters and basically pick up any food that passes by and can live for centuries. They don't only grow in Antarctica, but they seem to be playing a very curious role in the area. Ever since ice shelves began disappearing due to global warming, the appearance of glass sponges has increased. There seems to be a correlation between the two, and scientists are trying to work out what the exact cause is. If they figure it out, they will not only be able to understand the ecology better, but also understand how these creatures store carbon. This could help researchers understand some of the key components behind climate change, so it is definitely a mystery worth solving. Number 7, a perfect rectangle. Now, usually when someone says icebergs, first you think of the Titanic, rest in peace, and 2, you might imagine them looking massive and jagged and the whole metaphor of like there's so much going on beneath. But NASA spotted one that caused a couple furrowed brows. It was perfectly rectangular. This type of iceberg actually has a name, and they are called tabular icebergs. They have steep, nearly vertical sides and a flat top. They spotted what was essentially a massive ice sheet cake while doing a routine aerial survey. NASA tweeted the reason for this anomaly and said, "The iceberg's sharp angles and flat surface indicate that it probably recently calved from the ice shelf." The rectangular ice sheet itself is so massive that if it were to melt, the amount of water could fill every swimming pool in California several times over. Crazy. That just goes to show how much water is actually in Antarctica. Number 6, a lava lake. And no, I didn't say lava cake, but boy do I wish I did. But it is still surprising that somewhere tucked beneath all of that ice there is a pool of lava? What? On Saunders Island there lives one of 8 lava lakes found in the world. Scientists from the University College London and the British Antarctic Survey discovered the lake on the island due to thermal imaging from satellite data. They caught images of the volcano of Mount Michel and noticed a lake of lava sitting within its crater around 700 feet in diameter. The temperature reads at around 1,812 to 2,334 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 989 or 1,279 degrees Celsius. Which I guess isn't that surprising because it's lava. It's the hottest thing ever. But despite lava bubbling and volcanoes being a very common image associated with volcanoes, there have actually only been 8 ever seen. For the most part, lava dries into rock, which is the case with most of the 1,500 volcanoes on the Earth. So why, especially in such a cold climate, does this one stay molten? Scientists presume it's due to a combination of gases and steam that kind of lock in the heat, but they need to get a closer look, which could take years. Number 5, green icebergs. Actual green, they're jade green. Green icebergs are a weird phenomenon that probably doesn't suit the default image of icebergs in your brain. All the way back to the 18th century, green icebergs have raised many questions and have even had myths built around them. For over 200 years, the mystery of why they happen is finally close to being solved. A research team at the University of Washington believe they have the answer to their unusual hue. Usually icebergs appear white and light blue because of the water, but now Stephen Warren has a new theory, and it relates to the same explanation for blood falls from our last video, which, by the way, if you haven't watched it, go do that now. He believes that iron oxides are responsible for changing the color. Iron oxides are the same compound that create red-brown rust. When they react to oxygen, the iron oxides change the color of the ice. If this study is proven, this could also explain where phytoplankton get their nutrients from, and therefore explain how the whole ecosystem works. So very interesting. Number 4. Creepy creatures. Researchers from the British Antarctic Survey were investigating the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf and were set on getting a sample of the sediment core. While drilling around 900 meters through the shelf, the drill hit a rock. But not only that, the camera attached to the drill caught a wealth of creatures latched onto the rock. These creatures, who probably haven't seen the light of day for thousands of years, were suddenly there, making scientists' jaws drop to the floor. Animals similar to sponges were attached, but this discovery opened up all new ideas about life on Earth. These creatures are supposed to rely on food to drift past in order to survive, but these ones are stationary, and they are 1,500 kilometers upstream from the closest source of photosynthesis. How are they getting their nutrients, and where? Number 3. Shackleton's lost ship. Somewhere trapped by mountains of ice is the Endurance. In 1915, Sir Ernest Shackleton along with his crew had to abandon ship when the Endurance slipped beneath the Weddell Sea. The frozen water crushed the hull, so the crew escaped towards South Georgia Island in lifeboats. They traveled 720 nautical miles before they were rescued and left the Endurance where it continues to endure beneath the waves. The idea of recovering the ship has captivated the minds and hearts of seafaring historians and archaeologists for decades. Finally, a UK-led expedition attempted to relieve the ship of its glacial prison in 2019. They made a harrowing attempt but sadly came back with nothing. They sent a submarine to the ocean floor to look for the sunken polar yacht, but sadly the water took that too. They lost contact with it. One of the expedition members stated, "Like Shackleton before us, who described the graveyard of Endurance as the worst portion of the worst sea in the world, our well-laid plans were overcome by the rapidly moving ice and what Shackleton called the evil conditions of the Weddell Sea." Number 2. The Anomaly. Somewhere beneath the frozen wasteland of Wilkes Land in Antarctica, there is something that could change our entire understanding of history. The area they are most curious about is 151 miles across and dives 2,700 feet deep. The most common hypothesis for what is under there is a massive asteroid, and not the one I previously mentioned that blew up before it hit last video. This asteroid is twice the size of the one that destroyed the dinosaurs. If it is indeed beneath the ice, it could be the asteroid that caused the Permian-Triassic extinction event which killed 96% of Earth's sea creatures. Of course, other ideas of what the object could be extend to a massive UFO, and even a portal to a mysterious underworld called the Hollow Earth. The reason scientists believe there is something is due to what is called the Wilkes Land Gravity Anomaly, first discovered in 2006. NASA spotted gravitational changes which indicate an object of immense size. The biggest clue that it is an asteroid is the fact it's sitting in a 300-mile wide crater, so that makes sense. Whether or not you agree is up to you until the day we finally uncover it, but we can all at least agree that something is down there. But what exactly? Who knows? Number 1. Aliens and Atlantis. Antarctica looks like a secret, lying in wait beneath the cold, hard ice and unforgiving mountains. So it's no wonder how year after year dozens of people across the Earth report UFO sightings on Google Maps and strange snow patterns belonging to ancient beings. Despite its freezing temperatures, this place is a hotspot for conspiracies and mysteries, including those that believe the lost city of Atlantis is somewhere tucked away. Perhaps the massive unknown object beneath the crater is in fact just that, a lost city. After all, as I mentioned in part 1, Antarctica used to be a tropical oasis before it froze over. Who and what got left behind? Though it is highly likely that a civilization would have thrived here, scientists still haven't found any proof that one did, let alone anything that points to Atlantis. Just like the ocean, we have barely scratched the surface on what we know about this vast icy tundra, and we'll probably never really know.
Starting off number 10 now, we have aliens. Wherever there is a mysterious piece of land, someone will say that aliens have been there. Antarctica is obviously one of those places. One of the more recent claims came in April 2017, when conspiracy theorists claimed to have found evidence of an underwater base off the coast of Antarctica. The 500-meter long object was spotted on Smiley Island. This image was posted to the website for UFO sightings hotspot. The first thing people usually say is that it just kind of looks like an iceberg that's split away from the mainland. The UFO sightings website disagrees though. They say the object does not fit in with the normal shapes of usual icebergs. They say that the shapes and forms from this iceberg look very different when compared with icebergs, if that makes sense. They believe that it could actually be a secret UFO vessel in disguise. What do you think? Next up at number 9 now, we have the ice wall. Flat earthers. Don't they always have the best theories? A lot of flat earth critics raised a very fair question of what exactly happens when people sail or fly to the end of the earth, and how do we not just, fall off? The Flat Earth Society believes that there is a massive 150-foot ice wall surrounding the coast of Antarctica. Not only is it tall, it's also very thick, several hundreds of meters thick to be precise. Flat earthers often cite the British explorer James Clark Ross. The British expeditions went to Antarctica in the mid-1800s. In his travel notes he wrote of an icy wall, saying it was an obstruction of such character as to leave no doubt in my mind as to our future proceedings, for we might as well sail through the cliffs of Dover as to penetrate such a mass. Although of course many historians and those who have actually read the full extent of his journals will know that he is talking about an ice shelf, the Ross ice shelf that was named after him, although this shelf is just 50 meters high and was 600 kilometers long until it recently broke apart. To end this point about the ice wall, let me read one of my favorite quotes from the Flat Earth Society. Beyond the 150-foot ice wall is anyone's guess. How far the ice extends, how it terminates, and what exists beyond it are questions to which no present human experience can reply, apart from, I guess humans who study science, humans with telescopes, humans who have actually been to space. But yeah, forget about them. Moving on to number 8 now, we have Atlantis. For centuries people have been searching for Atlantis, the lost island that Plato wrote about in the Republic. It was the home of the Atlanteans, a technologically advanced civilization who were said to possess almost mystical qualities beyond the average human group. Some people dismissed it as fiction, but others have become convinced that the island is real and that it was submerged under the water thousands of years ago. There's a theory that Atlantis was not submerged though, and that it actually was frozen in the ice of Antarctica. In April 2018, the YouTube channel Conspiracy Depot shared a Google Earth image which shows a strange area in the Antarctic ice. The image shows a series of lines that, according to the video, have an artificial origin and have recently been exposed due to melting ice in the area. Now they say the object is split into 3 parts that are all about 7 meters long. It almost seems too perfect to be formed naturally. Okay, moving on to number 7 now, we have Nazis. I remember one video I did a while back where I discussed in detail the theory that the Nazi Party survived World War II and are currently living in a base on the dark side of the moon. Yeah, that was an interesting theory, but so is this. A lot of people think that this secret base was actually in Antarctica. They say that scientists in the Third Reich mapped out an area of rivers and caves across Antarctica, then they discovered a large underground lake. They decided this would be the perfect place for their secret base. They supposedly called it Base 22 or New Berlin. For the conspiracy theorists who believe this, they are now split between the ones who think the base is just lost beneath the ice and the ones who think it is still home to a Nazi community all these years on. Next up at number 6 now, we have the Bloop. You guys may have heard me mention this one before. The Bloop was a nickname given to a strange sound picked up by hydrophones across the Pacific in 1997. The hydrophones are essentially like giant microphones listening out for sounds. They are positioned over 5,000 kilometers apart from each other, so it's not very often they are all picking up the same sound at the same time. Except this time, a number of them picked up the same loud ultra low frequency sound across the Pacific. Take a listen. Now to many people that sounds like an animal, some sort of creature that made a noise so loud it was picked up across Earth's biggest ocean. If such a creature did exist, it would be bigger than anything we've ever seen. That's the only way it could make a sound that loud. Well, scientists say this is not true and that the sound was actually caused by ice quakes in the Antarctic. It's the sound of ice breaking up and cracking, and the sound was picked up as the bloop. Some people still aren't buying that though and say that the sound may have come from Antarctica, but it was definitely biological in nature. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the hollow earth. Now you've all heard of the flat earth theory that we talked about earlier, but have you heard of the hollow earth theory? As you can probably guess from the name, it proposes that the planet is entirely hollow, empty on the inside, that we all live on a shell on the surface that is about 500 miles thick, which is actually only a fraction of the way to the center of the earth. So where does Antarctica come into this? Well, in December 2016, a study was published indicating there seems to be a massive anomaly underneath the ice of Antarctica. Some researchers believe it to be the remains of a truly massive asteroid that is more than twice the size of the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. Another theory though is that it could be the portal or entrance to this hollow earth we live on. I also read an article about Russian scientists drilling down through the ice in Antarctica. Hopefully they don't just kind of pierce through to the hollowness. What? Moving on to number 4 now, we have Area 51. It doesn't matter what kind of video I do about conspiracy theories, Area 51 will always seem to crop up in conversation, even in Antarctica. In March 2018, news articles began circulating about Arrival Heights, a secret laboratory located deep in the mountains of Antarctica that is called Area 122. That kind of makes you think of how many secret bases there have been between Area 51 and Area 122. Well, I guess the answer is 71, but yeah. Journalists from New Zealand investigated the lab and found that it was filled with very old technology. It was very strange, like something out of a movie. The computers had floppy disk drives. Some of you guys might be too young to even know what that is. There was also a huge computer called the Dobson spectrometer, which had a periscope sticking up out of the roof. So what is this whole place all for then? Well, they say it's to study the hole in the ozone layer above the continent. The old equipment is so sensitive that even breathing or speaking too loudly is said to damage it. Some people say that the base is hiding more secrets and that Area 122 could be the new Area 51. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the pyramids. In 2013, an article in ScienceRay.com claimed that 3 ancient pyramids had been discovered in the Antarctic by a team of American and European scientists. Relatively little is known about the pyramids, and the team behind their discovery has remained quite silent about the whole thing ever since. One piece of information that emerged was that they were planning an expedition to the pyramids to research them properly and determine if they were natural or man-made. If they're natural, they could simply be the product of erosion or tectonic activity, but if they're man-made, that would open up the suggestion of an ancient civilization. We know of only a handful of civilizations that built pyramids as big as the ones that have been discovered in Antarctica, most notably the Aztecs and the ancient Egyptians. Conspiracy theorists are already jumping on board with the Antarctica pyramids being proof of a lost pyramid building civilization. Next up on number 2 now, we have the Big Melt. As I'm sure you're all aware, Antarctica is covered in a sheet of ice. At some points, it's 3 miles thick, and as I'm sure you've seen on the news, the ice caps are melting. When you see those images of glaciers drifting out into the ocean, it's natural to think, what if it all goes? Well, that would obviously be a disaster. Some estimates say that if all the ice on the Antarctica sheet was to melt, sea levels would rise by 200 feet. To give you an idea of what this would do, the entire east coast of the US would be underwater, and Florida would pretty much vanish. It would just be entirely underwater. Another scary aspect of all of this is that we don't know how much or how quickly this could happen, or even what it would look like. Climate scientists still have a lot to understand when it comes to this process, but their worst case scenario paints a pretty grim picture. And finally, number 1 now, we have ancient diseases. As we all know, Antarctica is pretty cold. So cold, land is buried under 2 kilometers of ice. Recently in Siberia, in part of the Arctic Circle, nomadic tribes were affected by an outbreak of anthrax that came as a result of permafrost melting and unleashing an ancient strain. A 12-year-old boy died and thousands of reindeer became infected. Obviously, there are many reasons to be worried about the ice caps melting, but it seems that ancient diseases could be trapped under the ice that modern day humans and animals have no resistance to. As the ice is so thick, we literally cannot know what is under there and what might be lurking. It seems that the permafrost provides the perfect conditions for bacteria to remain alive, dormant for millions of years. Scientists are worried that a Pandora's box of illnesses we don't know how to cure are out there waiting to emerge one day.
Number 10. Hidden lakes. So it took working at a champagne restaurant to find out that salt water doesn't freeze. Well, it does, but at very, very low temperatures. We used to use it to hyperchill wine that was in storage because salty water can get colder than 0 degrees Celsius without freezing. The saltier the water, the colder it gets because salt lowers the freezing point because it interferes with the water molecule's ability to form crystals, which is at least one reason why Deep Lake in Antarctica has stayed liquid for millions of years. It sits 55 meters below the sea level and the salinity of the water increases as it gets deeper. Despite temperatures reaching minus 20 degrees Celsius, the lake remains in a liquid state, though entirely uninhabitable, or so they thought. Scientists uncovered at least 4 microbe species living in the water, but that's about the only thing that can. Because the water can reach much colder temperatures than the sea, even penguins wouldn't survive for long. They have been caught swimming in it, but it would feel to them what it feels like for us jumping into an icy lake for a polar dip. You know, if they stay too long, it would probably kill them. How the lake formed exactly still has scientists baffled, but they're probably, but let's be honest, they'll probably figure it out. Number 9. Rainforests? Press rewind on the world for long enough and you would arrive in a world of opposites, which includes Antarctica being closer to a rainforest than an icy tundra. Scientists gather that before Antarctica was an expanse of ice, the region may have been host to lush forests, diverse wildlife, and even early human civilizations. But why do they think that? Scientists began discovering fossilized wood, leaf impressions, and signs of tropical trees. On top of that, they have found tons of fossils of marine animals, dinosaurs, and birds from the Cretaceous period, so you can see how they deduced the existence of some kind of forest-like area. Scientists are now looking to Antarctica for clues about evolution that we may have missed. So far, they've discovered a 50 million year old sperm cell on the egg case of a long extinct worm species, which is extraordinary if you think about it. Man, like, talk about resilience, buddy. Number 8. Mountains. Imagine the ice melts away, and beneath those massive, vast sheets of ice is an entire mountain range. Well, guess what? You don't have to imagine it, it's real. Hiding out beneath a 2 to 4 kilometer thick sheet of ice are what's called the Gamburtsev Mountains. They stretch across 1,200 kilometers and rise about a third of the height of Mount Everest. But how did an entire mountain range that high get covered in a sheet of ice? When Soviet geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev made the discovery in 1958, he had the same question, though he hasn't actually seen the mountains covered by ice, remember, but was able to figure out that they were there by measuring the abnormal gravity fluctuations in the area. They have since used radars to interpret the physical attributes of the mountains, but how did they end up that far beneath the ice? The mountains are around 1 billion years old, and scientists figure they should have eroded away by now. But the most popular theory as to why they are still there is that the erosion process just paused as soon as the ice sheet got large enough. To picture how immense this is, just imagine that the Rocky Mountains are covered by a sheet of ice. Astounding. Number 7. Dangerous bacteria. Have you ever heard of Pandora's box? Well, it may surprise you to learn that Antarctica might very well just be that. Scientists have discovered microbes beneath Antarctic ice that could threaten life on planet Earth. Maybe. Ice is an excellent preservation method, and the 420,000-year-old microbes may only need to melt in order to come back to life. Now, it is equally likely that these microbes could be entirely harmless, but there is a chance that they won't be. But the fact that it could be so dangerous has scientists keeping tabs on them as closely as possible. Still, it sounds like a Stephen King apocalyptic horror film waiting to happen, so who the heck knows. We didn't see the past 2 years happening, did we? Number 6. Blood Falls. Blood Falls. Get your mind out of the gutter. Sounds pretty terrifying, as it would have been for the person who first discovered it. In the McMurdo Dry Valley, there's a bright crimson river that cuts between Taylor Glacier and Lake Bonny. It looks like someone went to town on their dinner and just let the bodies drain into the water, but thank goodness there is a scientific explanation. Beneath the glacier, there's a very briny lake that was cut off from the atmosphere and is 3 times as salty as seawater, meaning, as we know now, that it can't really freeze, but it can, I guess, at a very low level. At first, it was suspected that a kind of red algae had infiltrated the glacier, causing the vibrant red hue, but in actuality, the briny lake is incredibly high in iron, and since it was cut off from oxygen for millions of years, the red color is a product of the reaction the water has to the oxygen and the sunlight from the atmosphere. The iron in the water oxidizes and rusts, like your car, which brings out the vibrant red illusion that is Blood Falls. Number 5. Ancient meteorites. You may think meteorites and asteroids are dangerous, but something far less obvious may cause more damage than a doom rock. 430,000 years ago, smack dab in the middle of the Pleistocene epoch, a massive space rock the size of a soccer field crashed through Earth's atmosphere, but instead of smashing into the Earth, an airburst happened. Just before it slammed into the ice, it burst into pieces, exploding in the sky, and launched a superheated jet of gas. The explosion caused massive amounts of damage, scattering pieces of itself everywhere, which is how scientists were able to deduce that this happened. They found pieces of the asteroid across the ice and used chemical clues to link the particles together. They were also able to determine that the force of the blast was about, get ready, 1,000 times stronger than the nuclear blast at Hiroshima, and that destroyed an entire city, and some. So imagine what would have happened if that happened today. Number 4. Oil guzzling fungi. So we mentioned that there might be a world-ending microbes beneath the ice, but there also could be something that saves it. A unique kind of fungi has been found beneath the ice gorging on petroleum. What on earth could that possibly be used for, you ask? Well, if these fun little guys love eating oil so much, then imagine how happy they'd be to dive into, let's say, an oil spill. They were first encountered when scientists came upon fuel containers left by explorers and immediately began studying them. Fungi don't usually just flourish at parties, they flourish in warm wooded regions, but perhaps the fungus that used to thrive in the rainforests we mentioned, they evolved to thrive in the icy barren conditions as well. So cool. We could learn so much about evolution that way. Number 3, top 3. Singing ice. Yup, the ice is singing. After scientists installed seismic sensors in the ice to measure its behavior, they discovered a mysterious song. Well, more like a massive ice drum. And it sounds like this. The pitch changes based on the weather, though you wouldn't be able to hear it should you just stand on it. It's not audible to the human ear, but the humming occurs on the 500,000 square kilometer on the Ross Ice Shelf, about the size of France. The winds blowing across the snow dunes is what causes the humming, and scientists figure that this could be an even better way to keep tabs on how the ice is doing in relation to global warming. The ice is thinning due to global warming, and the song is almost a gift, an easier way to track the stability and vulnerability of the ice shelf. Sounds like nature is working with us to save itself. Number 2, cosmic particles. A mystery capable of breaking physics. If that were possible, it would be found in Antarctica. Since March 2016, researchers have been furrowing their brows over 2 distinct events that shouldn't have happened. Physicists caught cosmic rays that burst out from the Earth, not from space. The rays were detected by ANITA, NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, a balloon-borne antenna. The balloon is designed to find cosmic rays from outer space, and caused a lot of excitement when it caught them coming up from the Earth instead. The discovery even implied theories that could support parallel universes. What boggled scientists about this discovery is that 2 particles seem to be cosmic rays that blasted through the planet and back out the other side. They shouldn't be able to do that. They now suspect that they may be particles that defy the standard model of how particles are supposed to behave, and maybe they're a new type of particle altogether. This is obviously a very simplistic explanation. It gets a lot more complicated and there's still more information out there, but still, really, really cool. And last but not least, a hidden German base. There are several versions of this story, some even going so far as theorizing that World War II mustache man escaped there and didn't die in his bunker. Some theories even say that German intelligence encountered aliens and developed new weapons with their tech. But the one truth is that there was indeed a secret World War II German base in Antarctica. Apparently there was an expedition to establish a base as a whaling station in order to increase Germany's production of fat, which could be used for soap and mayonnaise and butter. The expedition was led by Alfred Richter, and other theories suggest Adolf himself sent the expeditions to research ways Germany could become a self-supporting country. Perhaps the reason was that innocent, but with the base having been abandoned 70 years ago, we will never know.
Starting off this countdown, we have the UFOs. There are tons of urban legends surrounding Antarctica. In particular, it's thought that aliens once lived there after crashing into one of the mountains. From there, it's believed that they had their own secret base there. While in 2019, UFO hunter Scott Waring was on Google Maps looking at Antarctica from above when he spotted what he thought to be a UFO trapped under Antarctica's ice. According to Scott, he was looking over an island in Antarctica when he saw the craft. He said it was triangular in shape, has a hump in the middle, and it has a thicker edge. He believes that with global warming melting more and more of Antarctica, that the craft, which was once lodged in the ice, is slowly starting to reveal itself. But of course, no one has actually gone out to that spot to investigate what it might be. So it could just be ice, or it could be a real alien spacecraft. Now, I'm just a little concerned when that thing fully thaws. Like, I don't need no aliens coming back to life. No, thank you. In our 9th spot, we have the Loch Ness Monster. And if you guys are liking this video so far, then make sure to give it a big thumbs up, because you know what? It really helps us out. A couple of years ago, another man was on Google Maps when he saw what looked to be a big monster lurking in the water. It was this massive dark mass that had a lot of people terrified. But later it was debunked, saying that it was just a bunch of rocks. But did you know that a real-life Loch Ness Monster did once roam Antarctica? Yeah, over the course of a number of expeditions, scientists have discovered fossilized remains of a massive creature. And they say it's unlike anything they have ever seen. These remains are over 70 million years old and are from a creature that would have weighed about 15 tons. Not only that, but this thing was massive. It was 36 feet long. Now, it's considered to be part of the Elasmosaurid family, but this thing is the largest of its kind ever found. In our 8th spot, we have the Blood Falls. Now, if you're visiting Antarctica, this for sure would give you a heart attack. So they have something they refer to as the Blood Falls. There's a place where it literally looks like it's gushing out blood. It's like when the elevator doors open in The Shining and then like all that blood just gushed out. Yeah, that's what it looks like. So this was discovered back in 1911 by an Australian geologist. But don't worry, it's not actually blood. At first, it was thought that it was a result of microscopic red algae. But in 2003, it was actually discovered that the color was a result of oxidized iron. Nonetheless, it looks very creepy. In fact, I've seen this image circling around the web before, and people are using it as a PSA of like all the animals that have died in the Arctic and that's their blood. Clearly, it's false, but again, a very creepy image. Moving on to number 7, we have the creatures. Antarctica is home to a number of very creepy looking creatures. It was previously thought that because of its harsh conditions, nothing could survive there. But scientists have discovered a number of weird species that have adapted to survive in the environment. First off, let's talk about the sea spider. Now, Antarctica isn't the only place that has these creatures. But actually, the sea spiders in Antarctica are massive. In Europe, these spiders are about the size of your fingernail. In Antarctica, they're the size of a large dinner plate. Now, technically, they aren't actually spiders, even though they have 8 legs. They belong to a class of species called pycnogonids instead of arachnids. Seriously, these creatures are terrifying looking. It's like a mixture of a crab and a spider. And those legs are super long. What's super weird about them is that they pump blood with their guts. This is the first time that this kind of circulatory system has been seen in nature. And they breathe through their skin, which actually allows more oxygen to be absorbed into their bodies, which allows them in turn to grow bigger over time. How great. Coming in at number 6, we have the plane crash. In the 1970s, Antarctica, for some reason, was the place to travel to. Tons of tourists from New Zealand were booking day trips to Antarctica. However, one of these trips ended very badly. Due to low visibility, the plane crashed at the side of Mount Erebus. To this day, remnants of the crash are still there on the mountain. As for the passengers on board, well, their bodies were removed and stored at an American base on Ross Island. Many visitors to this day believe that this site is haunted by the ghosts of the passengers who died in the crash. People have heard eerie voices, felt ghostly presences, and have discovered unexplained footprints. One of the workers at the station experienced this all himself and is convinced it's haunted. So yeah, there's ghosts in Antarctica. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the ghost towns. Believe it or not, but Antarctica is filled with ghost towns. This is from humans trying to live there, but ultimately finding the weather conditions to be way too harsh, and then they end up just leaving. And they leave everything behind. As a result, there are tons of abandoned buildings and structures all over Antarctica, from military bases to research stations to huts. You get the picture. Back in the early 2000s, however, a team of scientists went to Antarctica and found something very disturbing. While exploring some of the abandoned buildings, they found several frozen bodies. Most likely, these people weren't properly equipped for the cold. But still, that must have been a horrifying find. In our 4th spot, we have the bristle worm. Okay, if you thought the sea spiders were bad, wait until you hear about this bad boy. This is something straight out of your nightmares. Basically, it's a worm-type creature with bristles, hence the name bristle worm. Its nasty-looking bristles help it crawl along the ocean floor and swim, and also to protect itself. This creature also has pretty sharp teeth, and it's a carnivore. So, you know, there's that. Oh, and it extends its jaws to catch its prey. It gets worse. This thing is huge. It can grow to more than 20 centimeters long and 10 centimeters wide. No, thank you. No, that's just no. And the part of the creature that looks like it would be its head, no, that's its throat. I know, I'm grossed out too. And at number 3, we have the penguin mummies. I mean, like ancient Egypt mummies, not like the penguin's mom. So in 2016, a group of scientists discovered hundreds of mummified penguins in Antarctica. Since Antarctica has little precipitation and is dry and cold, it can mummify animals much like a desert would. In fact, it's still considered a desert even though it's cold. Well, anyway, scientists found a large amount of mummified penguins, many of which were just chicks. Some of the birds were from 200 years ago, others were from 750 years ago, all still perfectly preserved. It's thought that these birds died because of global warming. The weather drastically changed on these animals and it caused them to slowly die. Nonetheless, it must have been pretty creepy to arrive there only to find a graveyard of mummies. In our 2nd spot, we have the monument. In 2009, a bunch of scientists in Antarctica discovered something rather strange. It was a monument with a bust of Vladimir Lenin on top, the former premier of the Soviet Union. After digging around the half-buried monument, they discovered an old Soviet Union military base, which by then was covered completely in snow. Had it not been for the monument sticking out, they probably would have never found it. Here's where it gets strange. After they unearthed this monument, the men began to become haunted by Lenin's ghost. And other explorers have claimed to have seen a ghostly apparition in that area, and they claim it looks exactly like him. Freaky, I know. Sometimes what's buried is sometimes better left buried. And in our number 1 spot, we have the ghost ship. Back in 1823, a boat named the Jenny left port on an exploration. However, along the way, something went wrong and it seems like the men aboard starved and then froze to death. The boat then got trapped in the ice in Antarctica. Several years later, a crew passing by noticed the ship and decided to climb aboard to see what's up. There they found the entire crew frozen to death, perfectly preserved. One of the last journal entries from the captain read, May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the only one left alive. That is so creepy.